inspiration came from witnessing Bigfoot's famous 1983 car crash in the Pontiac Silverdome. Jim saw the monster trucks in the 80s and 90s and felt that he was up for the challenge of building his own with the help of a friend named Chris Bergeron. After testing the truck in late 1996,
no.
officially debuted a year later in 1997. The body was a 1991 Chevy S10, featuring a dark green scheme with bright yellow flames adorning the side of the truck, and cyan rims to finish the truck's iconic look. Interestingly, it wasn't the first truck named Adventure that ran on the circuit during that time. An industry veteran from Brentwood, Tennessee by the name of Alan Pizzo had a teammate truck to Predator, also named Avenger. Ironically enough, both Kohler's and Pizzo's Avengers once even competed at the same event together. The origin behind Jim Kohler's Avenger name actually comes from the name of his father's drag racing car. In respect of this fact, Pizzo would let Kohler use the name instead from then on, and the truck was then converted to Carnivore. Jim Kohler would have Adventure compete in numerous Monster Jam events in 1998, though never made it to television during the year. That was until 1999, when Kohler would be invited to compete at the Monster Jam World Finals, which Kohler also there, even if his appearance wasn't memorable. Starting from that event onwards, Jim Kohler and Adventure would, to this day, be the only truck and driver to ever compete in each and every Monster Jam World Finals. Little did anyone know that the upcoming new millennium would single-handedly help catapult
hold on, me mode.
the spotlight,
Yes, Fox.
make him so well known and so beloved as he is and his
I mean, sure.
now. In 2000, Jim continued running mostly for Monster Jam and began receiving major
Smithsville.
exposure. The 2000 televised season was
I just randomly thought of it. Smithsville.
it featured less of the more
Smithsville.
well-known established
Smithsville.
independent teams and names from before.
I just thought of it.
Monster Patrol, Carolina Crusher, Barefoot, and others, with smaller teams receiving more exposure in their place, like Alan Pizzo's Predator.
The New England Patriots, after that terrible interception, now the score is 21-7.
Assembly, Predator, John Seasock's Sudden Impact, Jim Jack's Reptoid, and well, Jim Kohler's Avenger.
So, what's it called? We're gonna have hotels here, by the way, Talks. And when do you get back? When do you get back?
Quickly helped establish him as someone to pay attention to. Following said crash, Avenger's body shifted to a much newer version of the S10, which became the team's most frequently used body
Tuesday?
as time went on. During this time, the
2 weeks again?
beginning to shift toward freestyle as its main attraction. Having
God damn. What the hell are you doing that's gonna take you 2 weeks to come back?
with Monster Jam officially turning it into a competition. Kohler had never been confident in his racing abilities, so he saw freestyle as the area where he could not only have the most fun, but where Adventure could shine the most, and he was correct. By 2001, Adventure had begun to hit its stride, and
Damn, you're going school shopping?
shifted into what is now known as Mr. Excitement, which many of you have grown up enjoying. With this change in attitude came a similar change in attitude when behind the wheel. Kohler was in the minority of drivers that, during that time, had openly embraced and even preferred the chaotic and destructive nature that freestyle brought to the sport, and his driving reflected it. Jim had become much more aggressive when driving Adventure and began pushing his truck well past its limits in order to perform well. With this freestyle at the 2000 World Finals being what would certify him as a monster truck star. Kohler had also begun competing in special events, Jamboree events, as well as Pro MT races, proving that despite his preference for freestyle, Jim was ready and willing to enter the most fiercely competitive
racing leagues with Avenger. Along with the change in personality came the formation of Team Scream Racing, with a new Team A truck by the name of Brutus debuting in the summer of 2001. In 2002, Avenger would debut the now iconic 1957 Chevy Bel Air body that almost all Avengers have been known by. The truck continued to gain notoriety and a fan base due to Cola's eccentric personality and his exciting performances at Monster Jam events, despite 2002 World Finals seeing him roll over early in freestyle. 2003 would be a landmark year for Avenger. By this time, the truck was now 7 years old with 6 years of competition under its belt. Despite the 2003 Monster Jam season not being televised at all, Cola was still a crowd favorite wherever he went, but few could have predicted the magic that he would have at the 2003 Monster Jam World Finals. By this time, Cola's World Finals appearances were exciting at best.
You know what you should do? You should start the pier here, and then it'll go all the way out here.
Also, than when he was first shown on television. Jim Cola would lay down an excellent and all-out chaotic freestyle run that saw him earn the freestyle.
So this means, if I'm correct, you will not be back until like around July 20th.
In a Monster Jam World Championship in racing or freestyle. Cola had entered the world of trucks as a hobbyist, and within a decade was a world champion. In 2004, Avenger had much to prove.
He's going on vacation again for 2 goddamn weeks.
The reigning world freestyle champion, classed alongside the names like Anderson and Mentz, it placed a lot of newfound pressure on Jim's shoulders. He had a reputation to live up to, and live up to it he did, continuing to display his bombastic personality and drive Avenger harder than ever before.
The river?
Year, Jim Cola would win his very first televised Monster Jam event in Indianapolis that year, recreating the magic of his championship-winning run from the year prior and having one of the best freestyles of the season. The 2004 Monster Jam World Finals saw Cola start a tradition that has been continued to this very day. The usual dark shade of green with the yellow flames was now replaced with a bright shade of orange and blue and green flames almost as if they were inverted. Despite the awesome new scheme, Avenger didn't live up to the moniker that he had been displaying all season, breaking immediately in freestyle. But Jim still had his pride and would be back to fight another day. The orange body would be run again later that year for the 2004 Monster Mash event in Joliet, Illinois, put on by Route 66 Raceway. That same year, Avengers teammate Brutus would debut its iconic concept body, replacing the S10 from before, which the truck has run ever since. In 2005, Cola would once again be invited back to compete at the Monster Jam World Finals.
Why does our idea of health and well-being so often stop at the mouth? Tooth decay is the most prevalent chronic disease in the entire world.
Finals. Interestingly, his new scheme was a mashup of both his regular scheme and last year's orange body. But the split paint scheme wasn't the only talking point of the event. It was Jim Cola jumping into the water fountain that became a memorable moment for fans in attendance. This act of physical comedy became a tradition that has continued in each and every Monster Jam World Final since, in some form or fashion. In 2006, Jim was still driving Avenger as aggressive as ever, and was able to compete in the final Monster Jam event to take place in the Pontiac Silverdome, the venue that sparked his love for monster trucks, as well as his first major event to compete in. In terms of new schemes for World Finals, 2006 saw the debut of the famous Chrome Avenger. In a similar fashion to his crash from New Orleans in 2000, Cola's crash at World Final 7 in 2006 was so monumental that it was featured on the cover art for that year's World Finals DVD. 2007 saw Avenger debut a new variation of the pre-existing body at World Finals, that being the same design with a lighter green tint. In 2008, Jim Kohler would win yet another televised
White and black
event,
stripes.
this time being in Detroit,
Where?
Michigan, not far from Pontiac. 2008.
Oh,
Edition of the
you mean modern day Listtown? I started the fucking development, but no one wants to own a business there.
Finals through to 2008's World Finals events were memorable yet brief, with little indication that Jim would win another World Championship. The summer of 2008 saw a big change in pace for Avenger and Team Screen Racing. By then, Avenger was over 10 years old, and despite being a great performer, Jim's truck was what failed him most of the time. It was clear that the team needed trucks that were both capable and durable, because the ones they had were frequently falling apart. In the world of monster trucks, where trucks are always evolving, becoming stronger, getting faster, and more technologically advanced, Kohler debuted a brand new Avenger chassis dubbed Avenger 2. An early version of this chassis had debuted the year prior for Bob Robinson's Aftershock, and it was time for Avenger to utilize
So how much
as well.
patch of grass are we patching up?
The addition of Avenger 2 was the second chassis for Brutus, also dubbed Brutus 2. From there, the original two trucks would be repurposed with Team Scream's other identities. Spike and Wrecking Crew had debuted in 2005 for a special events show in the RCA Dome, but with no full-time chassis for them to be run on, they had only been running at select shows. Therefore, Avenger 1 would be repurposed as Wrecking Crew, and Brutus 1 would be repurposed as Spike. Avenger 2 has been hailed as one of the most impressive trucks on the circuit, because despite being built in 2008, to this day, the truck is still competitive despite the advanced age of the truck. Not only that, it's also incredibly durable,
because it's an unrealistic animal.
That for other trucks might spell the end and subsequent retirement of said chassis. With the more durable design, it was reflected
The Niggersaurus.
in his driving style. He would take even bigger risks in freestyle, trying to please the fans with his jaw-dropping performances. Once again, the team had a memorable showing at the Route 66 Raceway Monster Mash in Oleans, Illinois that same year, where not only were the two new trucks competing, but perhaps the highlight of the event was Jim Kohler's brother, Steve Kohler, driving Avenger 1 as Masher, where he would have an incredible freestyle that saw him plow through a double-wide trailer, and proving that he had what it took to be a star performer as well. Kohler's 2009 season would start out strong and continue to get better and better. At the season opener in Minneapolis, he won freestyle, and later that year in St. Louis, he won freestyle again. With him being invited yet again to the World Finals, his newest scheme would be the now beloved Scuba Avenger. The design was probably the most unique of the Avengers since its very first, because it strayed away from being the usual recolor, this time with the creative design of an underwater Avenger. Even the skull had a scuba mask, hence the design's name. Later that year in November, Monster Truck Promotions Australia would host the second annual South Pacific Monster Truck World Finals.
Well, pickled everything, Sam. The big deal meal, Sonic Smasher, top of Grillo's pickles, pickled seasoned tots.
Finals, which featured a mixture of Australian monster trucks and drivers and more established American drivers like Paul Schaefer, Craig Christensen, and Dan Patrick. This event became notable for featuring the debut of what has been nicknamed as the Aussie Avenger, a recreation of Avenger that ran a Chevrolet Nomad body with a similar design to what was run in the United States. Cola would drive the truck in its debut and would win the Freestyle Championship in appropriate fashion. In 2010, not much had drastically changed for Avenger or Team Screen Racing in general, but by this point it was clear that
Yes.
it was firing on all cylinders and had established themselves as one of the top independent teams in the sport, a distinction that they hold to this day. That year in Detroit, the entire team competed together on television in what ended up
the hell?
a showcase. This was the first time all four of Team Scream's trucks competed in a Monster Jam event together at once. Jim Cola had also had an incredible freestyle victory at the Minneapolis Metrodome that same year, in which he would also win the Freestyle of the Year award. For the World Finals, another simple yet iconic design was introduced, the Black Rat Rod Avenger. Many hailed this Avenger to be one of its best, simply because of its gothic color scheme and sleek looks. A matte black finish with bright white flames with red tips, the truck just screamed perfection.
Alright, you can TP out.
Cola performed quite well at the event, ending a slump that he had been in at the World Finals. For the South Pacific World Finals 3, Aussie Adventure would return with Cola once again behind the wheel, and he would defend his Freestyle Championship. Little did he know that this may have been a sign of things to come the following year. 2011 was another landmark year for Team Scream.
I want the pier to like start here.
The team had expanded
Fox.
to such a degree that once again, the entire team could compete at a single show, or compete in various stadiums and arenas for various tours across the United States and Canada. The entire team would also embark on one of their first West Coast tours for Monster Jam, going to cities such as Anaheim and San Diego. Avenger received an updated paint scheme that was more akin to the style of the previous World Finals bodies, using a bigger font, a more vibrant color of green on the truck, and the planes also being quite bigger. Once again, Avenger debuted a new scheme at the World Finals, and that was the first candy apple red design that changed up the look of the truck once again. However, that wasn't the only talking point of the event, as Jim Cola would lay down a freestyle run that was set to take the World Freestyle Championship for a second time. He would end up doing so by winning the tiebreaker against Camper Queen to secure his second ever World Freestyle Championship. A feat that to this day only Tom Meents and Adam Anderson have been able to pull off. This helped prove that the Freestyle Championship in 2003 was not a fluke, as Jim proved that he still had what it took to win on the biggest stage. Over in Australia, Aussie Adventure was now running more commonly, however not with Cola